So welcome. Again, I'm Mari Watanabe, Executive Director of Partners in Diversity, and I hope you and your loved ones are well. Today's equity conversation topic, maximizing employee resource groups, or ERGs, is part of an ongoing series where diversity influencers like you can engage in meaningful conversations. And through these conversations, we hope to inspire you to make meaningful changes within your own organizations. So joining me now is our Director of Programs and Communications, Tracy Lamb, to tell you all about our upcoming programs. Tracy?
Thank you, Mari. Good morning, everyone. To better serve you, our members, during this difficult time, we have increased our programming by about 300%, moving 2 of our program series from quarterly to monthly. And many of the topics are based on feedback from you and other community partners. So be sure to fill out the survey at the end of the session. It will definitely help us get ideas on what to talk about next. So here is a look at the upcoming programs. Next week on September 29th, we have a great panel discussion on policies and practices that put people first. It is part of our monthly Breakfast for Champions. And October is National Disability Employment Awareness Month. So in honor of that, on the 15th, we are hosting Breakfast for Champions on the intersection of race and disability. On October 21st, the equity conversation topic is on healthcare inequities and how employers can better support the wellness of employees of color. Member liaisons from your organizations will be receiving email invitations to these events shortly. And then in November, I'm really excited to announce that Say Hey is back. Our signature networking event took a hiatus because of the pandemic, but now we're ready to bring it to you virtually, thanks to Oregon State University. So mark your calendars for Tuesday, November 24th from 4 to 6 p.m. If you know of a professional of color who recently moved into our area in the last 18 months or so, please have them visit our website, and that's pidsayhey.org. In addition to recognizing the new professionals of color into town, we also provide goodie bags. So if your organization wants to donate a digital gift to the honorees, please let me know by emailing sayhey@partnersindiversity.org. So I hope to see all of you at one or more of these events. And then finally, just as a technical note, today's event is being live captioned by LNS Captioning. To activate that feature, if you hover down to the bottom of your screen, you'll see the CC icon. You click on that, you can choose an option of showing subtitles, a full transcript, or both. And then you can also adjust the size of the captionings if you wish. So that's it from me. Back to you, Mari.
Oh, great. Thanks, Tracy. Yeah, I hope to see you at some of our next program, and especially Say Hey, hoping to get a lot of people on there. So right now, I'd like to do a poll to get a sense of who's here today. So the first question is, how long has your organization had an employee resource group? 0 to 5 years. You can see the poll come up, Tracy. 6 to 10, or maybe you don't have one right now, and that's okay. But go ahead and fill that question in. And then the second question is, what is the primary purpose of your ERG? And you can select, we have multiple choices there. So advance equity, inclusion and belonging to a company culture, or business development, or generating revenue, or it could be for leadership development, networking, socializing, or community building, or other. If you have an other for your ERG, another reason that's not, we didn't list, love to see what that is, so you can just put it in the chat box. And so Tracy, I'm going to leave it to you because I cannot see the percentages of where we are. So
we are about 75% of the attendees have voted.
Oh, there we go. Okay. Oh, good. Oh, okay. So we're getting close. So we have about 76% who voted so far. So if you're just entering the room, I see a couple people. We're just doing a really quick poll. One is, how long has your organization had an ERG? And the other question is, what is the primary purpose of your ERG? So give it another couple seconds here. Okay, Tracy, why don't we go ahead and close the poll? So 0 to 5 years is 54, more than half of you is about 0 to 5 years, and there's 31% that do not have one right now. So great, so you'll learn a lot of great things today. And then the second one is, what is the primary purpose? So to advance equity, inclusion, and belonging. Definitely the highest at 85%. Some of you use your ERGs to build business development. And then, yeah, if you have another, 17% of you had another, go ahead and fill in. So I see leadership, professional development, networking is another reason. So great. Awesome. Thank you for sharing this. This is great information for our speakers as they start to talk. So today's topic is particularly important and timely, and that's because we recently published a year-long diversity retention study. It showed that people of color often felt like they didn't belong and have difficulty finding connections, both in the workplace and in the community at large. So one of the many solutions that our focus group came up with is leveraging employees' resource groups to build better and stronger communities at work. So employee resource groups are sometimes called affinity groups, business resource groups, or just resource groups. When well done, ERGs can improve the culture in a workplace, empower employees, support the mission of an organization, and develop a leadership pipeline, and so much more. However, when ERGs are created and executed with a little more than check-the-box programs, they can do more harm by providing a false sense of inclusion. So today we are lucky to have 3 leaders who will share their insights with us on how to maximize ERGs and use it to enhance diversity, equity, and inclusion. Each of them will do a short presentation, then we'll take audience questions, and finally we will break you up into smaller groups so you have a chance to talk to each other and reflect on ways to maximize your ERG. So our first speaker today is Karis Stoudamire-Phillips. Karis is the Director of Corporate Social Responsibilities at Moda Health and Delta Dental. Her focus is to develop, direct, and implement the community engagement strategy and action plan throughout Oregon and Alaska. In addition, Karis serves as the relationship manager of the company's signature statewide community building partnership with the Portland Trail Blazers. Prior to joining Moda, Karis was the corporate relations officer with the Legacy Health Foundations and was the founder and administrator at Damon Stoudamire, Inc. So Karis, take us away.
So thank you, Mari. As Mari said, I'm with Moda Health and I direct corporate social responsibility there. I've been at Moda for 9 years, and I started with Moda on our diversity, equity, and inclusion journey about 2 years after my start date. Moda has always had a strong base of employees on all levels who were interested in how to establish a workplace built on strong principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion, but there were fundamental challenges as to where and how to start this work. Though not a formal DEI initiative was in place when I came to Moda, independent DEI advances were being made in areas of hiring and retention, training, customer service, marketing, corporate giving, and more. However, that all changed in 2016 with the birth of Moda's Diversity Council. As a founding member of Moda's Diversity Council, myself and my colleagues committed to actively dedicating our time to formalize how we at Moda celebrate diversity and create an inclusive workplace. The council, both then and now, is composed of Moda employees from every level, from senior vice president and down, with each council member possessing an equal seat at the table as a contributor to our collective advancement and success. As a group, we sought and reviewed and discussed a lot of best practices and learned that the establishment and support of employee resource groups in a workplace was a key identifier of success in promoting an inclusive environment. a small group of council members created a definition of an employee resource group and a process to establish groups and maintain them. Our working definition is that ERGs are independent, voluntary groups of employees who share common interests and experiences. ERGs are forums for employees that create an environment in which employees feel encouraged, empowered, and supported in maximizing their potential and value to the company. We mandated that any, and I repeat, any employee can join any ERG. Moda ERGs offer opportunities to network, engage, dialogue, as many of yours do, with other employees with common interests and goals. Develop new skills, enabling employees to learn, grow, and achieve. Play a role in initiatives that positively affect employees throughout the company and become more involved in our surrounding communities. They also foster a creative and innovative work atmosphere and improve communication and inclusion across the company. We further mandated that any ERG member would be allotted 1 hour each month for ERG meetings on company time. And any additional time for ERG activities would be at the supervisor's discretion. We wanted to make establishing an ERG relatively easy, but with criteria that displayed that there was a true commitment for a long-lasting coordinated group. So we just have 3 steps to our process. And that's the first thing you have to do is contact HR to set up a meeting to discuss your proposed group and the requirements for being sponsored. So the sponsorship of your ERG, we have, as our diversity council has a subgroup that is the sponsorship group. So it's all diversity council members. So it's not some person that has no idea what your goals are and what diversity, equity, and inclusion even is. So you just have to set up that meeting with HR. Second, submit a proposal that includes a charter and a member roster and the name of whoever that executive sponsor is going to be. And once that is received, the committee will then review it and either okay it or deny it. And honestly, we've only denied 1. And that was because it really was established as more of a club. And we definitely differentiate between what a club is and what an ERG is. And so that was the one time that we actually did have to say no to a group that wanted to have an ERG. Ongoing requirements for sponsored ERGs are reviewed annually and administered by the sponsor committee, which is our subgroup of the Diversity Council. This just includes things like updating your charter and your bylaws, leadership updates, and groups can be disbanded. And the only time we've had to disband the group is when they fell below membership. And we do require that all ERGs maintain a membership of at least 6 people. And that's just a number we came up with. They work, whatever works for you, but that's the number that we've come up with, that when you have at least 6 people, you can assign things and get things done. Or if the group fails to maintain an active chair or executive sponsor or any violations of like company code of conduct, things like that. The benefits of being a sponsored ERG are many, and those include that the groups, of course, can meet during business hours. There's operational support from our HR team. The company will assist with all marketing of meetings and materials. That includes flyers, so you don't have to try to create them on your own. Marketing is going to help with that because you are an established ERG. Leadership support and funding opportunities. We all want to know about that. So I will pick up right there with how we've become successful through our funding opportunities. Since I serve as Moda's Corporate Social Responsibility Director, I have a budget. And so I have included funding of ERGs in my CSR budget. So when we first started in 2016, we didn't start at the beginning of the year. We run on a calendar year at Moda, not a fiscal year. So when we finally were established, we didn't start at a time of the year where we could create a budget. So I decided that I was going to allot a part of my budget for ERGs. And so what we did is each ERG was given $500. And these funds can be used at the discretion of the ERG, and we've had people pay for speakers, front money for goods to sell as for a fundraiser, such as t-shirts, or even purchase apparel to wear at events to identify their ERG. So really, we're open on that. Further opportunities for funding between employee resource groups and corporate social responsibility have allowed me to really call upon the lived experience and expertise of our ERG members as we're always looking to find and establish relationships with new nonprofit organizations across the state of Oregon and Alaska where we operate. And if you may know this or you may not, but Oregon has the largest number of nonprofit organizations of any US state. Yes, so that's a good thing and it's a bad thing. It's great because there's a lot of people out there doing really amazing work and helping so many different people and servicing the needs of so many different communities. But at the same time, I often tell people within our company, I know a lot about a lot of organizations, but there's a lot of them that I just don't know about and I need help. And so I say, I can't dance at every party, so come join me. And so it's I've really called on people to share with me about organizations that they may know about. They know people within ERGs are going to know more about communities that I may not know about. And so I'm going to admit that and call on them for their expertise. And so with that, our ERGs therefore have a direct impact on our corporate giving decisions. And so that's a motivator in general for a lot of ERG members. I hear from a lot of people telling me about different organizations and they'll go on a site visit with me or introduce me to an organization executive director. I welcome those opportunities. ERG members also serve as volunteers supporting our CSR initiatives by committing their groups to staffing Moda spaces at sponsored events and also being guests representing Moda at sponsored events such as galas and fundraisers. So they get to go to a lot of those nice dinners and we have fun. ERGs at Moda have become a strong force. It is our ERGs who push for the creation of Moda's diversity wall, which where we have a wall in our building that where community events are posted and all ERG members and individuals in the company as well are invited to post anything that's going on in the community on that wall. We also have a quote on that wall every month and there's corresponding magnets that have that quote on them so people can take those as well. Moda ERGs bring cultural awareness on site, inviting all Moda employees to celebrate and learn about cultural holidays and historical facts. For example, the African American ERG annually invites, if you are familiar with Kwanzaa in any way in Portland, we invite Mama Joyce, who's the Portland's mother of Kwanzaa. She comes in every year and shares about the history of Kwanzaa and how to celebrate it. And we then follow that up with having a Kwanzaa display in our lunchrooms that have the place setting and everything is labeled. Another example of how we've really been able to use or partner with our ERGs and our CSR initiatives is that for, I'd say at least 2 years, I was contacted by the El Grito celebration to be a sponsor of El Grito. And we would be a sponsor every year, a Moda sponsor, but we never had an on-site table. We did not have a table or booth at the event. And the reason why we did not have a table or booth at the event is because I will be quite honest, my Spanish is not good. And took Spanish in high school, it's not good. And I felt that if we were going to be at that event, then we needed to be respectful and representative of that event. I did not feel that it was fair for me to have someone at the table who did not speak Spanish when a lot of the attendees, their first language was Spanish. And so though we supported it monetarily, we did not have a booth. Once we had a Latino ERG, that was one of the first things that I brought to that group is that this is something that I would love for us to have actual representation on site at. And honestly, they have taken it and run with it. All I do is write the check. And that is something that they have taken on as something that they own. They own that event and how Moda is presented and represented at that event. So we look to ERGs to enlighten and educate Moda employees, inviting guest speakers to address our employees in forums, leading us annually in events such as the Pride Parade, presenting on topics such as the history of Juneteenth, which our African American ERG did for the first time this year. And ERG members are our Diversity Council members as well. And so as our country has been confronted by the two pandemics of COVID-19 and racial injustice, it is our ERGs who have been called upon to further lead and represent Moda, recommending volunteer opportunities, giving opportunities, books to read, learning resources, events to attend, and supporting just in general In fact, our ERGs have, during this time, become really open public forums. And we've seen an increase in membership or just people wanting to join the meetings just to talk about things. So I'm definitely, there've been counseling sessions. We have an African American ERG meeting this afternoon, and I know it's going to be a heavy one. It's definitely going to be a heavy one, and I'm preparing for this afternoon. Our employees learn, how our employees learn about ERGs, which is great, is that we partner so closely with HR. And our HR team, they share about ERGs during employee orientation and encourage employees to join. And in fact, after every employee orientation, if anyone expresses any type of interest in a particular ERG, those ERG leaders are contacted by HR, and these are the people that were interested. And so I take it up on myself as a co-chair for African American ERG to follow up with those employees and give that personal invitation to have them come and join, or just to listen in on a meeting. Our ERGs have also informally, but now in a more formal process, have become mentors, and we've been doing some mentor opportunities and job shadowing. We have, and it came out of an ERG meeting, 2 different ERGs actually, our Women in Leadership and our African American ERG came out of those meetings that people just, what are things that we can do? And people said, it would be great to learn, what do you do in your department? I'm new to the company. And so we've started setting up informal job shadowing, and now HR is like, we should be doing that. So they, we've been able to influence how things work within the company. Our ERG members are some of the most engaged of all Moda employees and have become de facto recruiters. Some of our ERG members even partner with HR and join them at job fair recruiting events. And the possibilities, I think, are just endless for these vibrant and active groups to continue to influence Moda's culture. And if I didn't say, but our employee resource groups include currently African American, Asian Pacific Islander, Latinos, LGBTQIA, Next Generation, which they go by Next Gen, veterans, women in leadership, and Be Better Speakers. And the Be Better Speakers, that one is, it's similar to, oh gosh, now I'm gonna draw a blank on, similar to, they are part of Toastmasters. And they also help with the speaker series that we have that's run by our Diversity Council and ERGs. So we are successful because of the integration into all of Moda's business strategies, the executive support, and the funding commitment. I'd say those are the 3 things that have made our ERG successful. And I hope I didn't go over time, and I am going to pass it back to Tracy, I think. Is that right? Or Tracy or Mark?
Mari will take it.
All right.
Nope. It's me. Thanks, Karis. Lots of great information in there.
Trying to get it all in.
So up next we have Joy Fowler. Joy is the Diversity and Inclusion Manager at the Port of Portland. She provides diversity programs that help to build strong internal community relations at the port, and is the connector between well-maintained diversity strategy. Start over. She is the connection between a well-maintained diversity strategy, robust programming, and a strong workforce. Is what Joy is her passion and belief in for the port. So sorry, Joy, kind of bumbled that, but take it away, please.
All righty, I'm going to share my screen. Let's see. All righty, can you all see that okay?
Yes.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for the wonderful invitation, Mari, or introduction, Mari. I appreciate it. As she said, I am Joy Fowler with the Port of Portland. I've been with the port for 1 year this month, and it has been a true journey and a wonderful transition from financial services, where I did DEI, to now aviation, which is amazing. I am going to just dive right in. I'm going to share a little bit about the structure of our employee resource groups and our business resource groups at the port. The port does differentiate between the 2. Our employee resource groups, which have been around for about 2 years, are listed there, all but the Leaders Next group. And those are the ones that we have in existence. They have been in existence for a while. And then we just introduced last year, we're on a fiscal year. So last year we introduced business resource groups, which really focus on the business goals of the organization. So you'll see our newest one there is Leaders Next, which focus on the development of future employees so that they can learn and engage and the port doesn't always have to go outward to look for talent. They can actually look to this group for future talent. Coming up next as an additional business resource group is our young professionals. They are our Gen Z and and millennial group. They decided to combine, which I thought was an interesting concept, but they say they can do it. So they are coming next, even though they have very different views on DEI, they are partnering to join our business resource groups. The way the port was designed when I first arrived was there were only one of our ERGs had a charter and bylaws. And I decided to give them a little bit of a different structure, which is what you see here. So they all roll up to me. That was designed before I arrived. And then I worked to give all of them one set of bylaws for consistency purposes. This way, they're all operating on the same cadence. They're all doing, looking at their officers from the same perspective. They're moving and doing things in the organization that have a set of consistency and a strategy. Then the way they differentiate themselves is with their individual charters. And each group has their own charter that helps them outline their goals, their objectives, their mission, not only what's in scope, but also what's out of scope. And as they plan to engage and do different things, I am constantly referring them back to, is that in the scope of your charter? And if it's not in the scope of your charter, then please bring your leadership together to decide whether it's something that you want to still take on, though it is out of scope, or if it is something you want to parking lot or move to or ask a different ERG or a different group within the port to do that. And then collectively, what I did was I asked all of them to start to approach being an ERG or participating in an ERG a little bit differently, really looking at building partnerships amongst one another, meaning doing things together as a collective unit. So when I first arrived, the very first thing that they did was they had an ERG. At the time, there were no BRGs, so an ERG open house where the entire port could come and really learn and engage with the ERGs to understand how, maybe if they wanted to belong to them or if they wanted to learn more about them. And we actually have the same, I'm gonna call it a requirement that Moda has, which is that anyone can be part of any ERG. It does not matter. I want all of them, and they now understand the importance of welcoming everyone into their ERG. How can we expect individuals to learn and engage and educate themselves if in fact we are limiting, saying, oh, well, if you're not a member of the LGBTQIA community, you cannot be a part of our ERG. That is just something that I deem as unacceptable. And so that was one of the first things that I worked to change when I got to the port. I also developed a cohesive communication plan. So when you hear anything from an ERG, it is kind of led by me with their input. So for example, if there's a celebratory month or a heritage month, I craft an article, I send it to the ERG, I have them review it for accuracy, for consistency. If they want to add anything, delete anything, I take that and then I put it out to the rest of the port, so that this way people can, not everybody wants to come and engage with an ERG by showing up at their meetings, but there are ways that they can get to know more about them through reading and learning on their own. And that's one of the things that we do. I also created an ERG BRG guide, which is a little bit different from bylaws, that just gives them key ways that they can do things. Like if they want to put on an event or an activity at the port, here's what needs to happen. Here's who you need to contact. Here kind of are some consistent practices that have been done in the past that they can follow. And then, of course, they have their own individual activities and events that they host, everything from celebratory months to heritage months, and they do a lot of active things engaged. The port has one central area that they come to, and they have done a host of things from celebrating Lunar New Year actually in the airport, where our organization got to really welcome passengers as well as employees to see the celebration. Our Black Employee Network, they are engaged in bringing a choir during Black History Month, or having a family feud type of activity. So they all do their own individualized activities. And then a big one that I worked on was executive sponsorship. When I first came to the port, none of the ERGs in existence had executive sponsorship. And if they did have what they considered an executive sponsor, it was not someone at a level that could make decisions or that sat, I'll say it, at the table with other executives. So my question to all of them was, how effective are you in your strategy and working on policy and changing things, not only for your ERG, but for the port as a whole, if you don't have an executive sponsor? So we work to get everyone that is an ERG or a BRG to have an executive sponsor. I kind of feel like that was one of my that and charters were two of my biggest feats. So what did I learn, or what have we learned as a port? Our successes, as you heard me talk about, was executive sponsorship. In the small amount of time that port ERGs and BRGs have had their executive sponsors, we have already started to see change happen. Our Black Employee Network worked with their executive sponsor to put together some key things that they would like to see adjust and possibly change for the Black employees at the port. And they are now being reviewed and looked at, and I will be working with the ERG and that executive to present them to the entire executive team. Charter development was a huge undertaking. When you only have one out of, I think you just saw me show, I'll go back to it, that's 8 ERGs and BRGs. And when you only have one with a charter, it makes it really difficult for the ERG or the BRG to know what they're doing, why they're doing it, if it's something that they should be doing, if it fits within their goals and objectives. So charter development is something that I'm really proud that each of them are looking to do. One example I just want to share really quickly is, so our Leaders Next group has been listening in on our monthly meetings. We have monthly meetings for all of our ERG and BRG leaders to come in and share information. And a few of our ERG leads have been saying we really need to find individuals within the port that want to lead our BRGs and our ERGs. We want to kind of pass the torch to them, but people are really scared to lead, for whatever reason. And the Leaders Next group saw that and said, oh, we'll take that because we're Leaders Next. And the first thing I asked them was, is it within the scope of your charter? And I was really proud that she was like, yes, here's the scope, here's why it fits, here's what we're planning to do. And would you like to be involved in the meeting? And so that is the purpose of the charter development. And then we just decided, which I'm also very proud of, that we are compensating our employee resource group leaders, meaning if you lead or co-lead or chair or co-chair an ERG, we decided to compensate you at $500 a year in addition to your pay. And if you don't have a co-lead and you're running the ERG solely, you get $1,000 in your pay. And because we felt we were using the intellectual property of our ERG leaders, we felt that it was only fitting to compensate them for what they bring to the table. Areas of opportunity, I will say structure was probably the biggest area of opportunity for the port around ERGs and BRGs. The structure that you saw me put on the first slide was not the structure that was in place. They didn't really have a structure, and I don't think that that's a bad thing. What happens is you get excited, you want to start this work around DEI, and you're like, yes, we want resource groups, and you're like, go, do, form. And while that's great, I think having structure to help us move through the space of DEI consistently and cohesively needs structure. And so it doesn't mean that I take away the autonomy of the group, but it just means that I can go back to their charter and find out what they're working on and then hold them accountable in a way to the goals that they set out for themselves. And when we're looking to measure things, I can look to their charter to determine how we're going to measure our success. So that's the one area of opportunity that I saw. And I think it's probably, if I could recommend anything along with executive sponsorship and charter development, is that you start with a structure before you get ready to implement your ERGs and BRGs. And if you don't have a structure and you have them in place, take time to go back and do that. During the pandemic, I will say that our ERGs have shown up and done an amazing job. I think I saw in the chat, one of the questions was about, maybe not self-care was not the right word, but how are we taking care of one another? And each of our ERGs has done their own specific outreach to their members, holding meetings in a different format. So where meetings might have had a real formal structure in the past in terms of we're gonna follow these agenda items, now what they've done is they paused and said, let's talk about how you're doing, how you're faring during this time. What we are experiencing, when COVID started, our API resource group really struggled in some areas because there were harmful things that were being done to people. People were being discriminated that were part of the API community. And so we had to have those discussions. And now that we've transitioned to where there's, all the things going on in our country around Black Lives Matter and the Black community, they've had to deal with trauma in that respect. And so they brought in different speakers and different individuals. And so I think it's been really helpful and healing for the ERGs. And then I offer, we decided to bring in a culturally specific counselor during some different conversations where our employee resource groups are involved and engaged. And they hear from him over the next 3 months just to help with the healing process. From an engagement standpoint, they have totally adjusted and done things virtually in an instant almost. We did the majority of all of our celebratory months and heritage months are virtual. So they will prepare something via video and then demonstrate it on Teams, because that's the platform that we use, and share it with the entire port. They have different talks that they do. And so they've just switched right into virtual, and we've adjusted. We just held Diversity Month. We moved it from April to August, and we did 3 diversity activities using an organization called Diversity Works that implemented things about being unique and part of the DEI programming that we're doing, how we're stronger together as a team, and then building relationships and how important that is. And so engagement has been really, really important and also very active at the port. And then the last, around collaboration, I'm really thrilled that not only have they been collaborating with one another, which was one of my asks of them, but they've also been collaborating. We have a book club that's not an ERG. We have our Women Plus IT group that's not an ERG. And the ERGs have actually been going out and partnering and doing great things together with them. I was just on a call this morning where they asked if, the book club asked if they could collaborate with our ERGs and our other group called Pop Culture, which is similar to, as I said, a diversity council, and read Ibram Kendi's book. And so we're going to look at doing something around that together. So collaboration is alive and well, and I'm really thrilled to see it happen and how it happens amongst them. Some lessons learned. You heard me kind of talk about it, so we'll run really quickly through it. The importance of developing structure. But I have to share, I did have to learn something about developing a structure when you have a group that is already operating without a structure. It is far easier to hand someone the structure that wants to newly form a group and see them walk through it with ease and finesse, versus telling or advising a group of individuals that we are now going to a structure that have not had the opportunity of a structure for over 2 years. So I will say it was definitely a challenge, and there were some things. I tend to be very methodical in my thought and want things to go a certain way. And I will say they taught me a thing or two about the importance of structure, is also to be mindful and be respectful of how they have been operating, and give them an opportunity to adjust to that they're being brought something completely new that they may or may not be totally excited about. So I just wanted to share that one important point. The implementing of executive sponsorships from the beginning, that bringing them in at the end, a lot of people, that was another area where I literally had to talk to them for about 6 months about why an executive sponsor was important, why I couldn't be an executive sponsor, how executive sponsors have a seat at the table, I do not, and what that seat at the table means for them. And so that's one area also that I thought was definitely a lesson learned. And then encouraging autonomy while managing strategy. My objective is, for me, that set out in terms of my goals, is how do I develop a strategy for ERGs so that we see natural progression, and not progression in a sense that they have to, you know, move heaven and earth to accomplish certain things, but that they're growing their membership, that they're diversifying their membership, that they're holding themselves accountable, that they're following their charter. So that's the strategy part, but also encouraging their level of autonomy, where I don't have to be engaged in everything. I don't have to be at every meeting. I don't have to come up with ideas for them. They come up with their own ideas. And one last story, and then I will turn it over around autonomy. They heard Partners in Diversity, the presentation by Dr. Martinez around the retention data with people of color or minorities specifically in Portland. And they got together collectively without me and decided they wanted to bring Dr. Martinez to the port. And it was funny because at first I was like, what? Oh my gosh, I can't believe they did this. And then I was like, no, wait, I'm excited. They did this without me. They're collaborating, they're coming together. And I thought it was so amazing. So it really did help me be mindful to encourage their level of autonomy, but also help manage the strategy and help them be successful, so that they can operate in terms of budget, in terms of everything. I didn't talk about budget, but the last thing I will say about that is the port has a budget. They did assign a budget to each of them, all the same amount they would get initially. And then I realized not all of them were spending the same amount of money. Some would have 1 activity a year, some would have 10 activities a year. And so now we adjust the budget and look at it as an individual use. And then if there's a smaller group that maybe wants money or maybe a little additional money, and a group that's spending more money is a little over what I would consider the budget, then I will ask them to pare things down. So all of that kind of works together for really helping to manage the strategy of the ERGs. And with that, I will turn it back over to Mari. So thank you very much for having me.
Thanks, Joy. That was jam-packed with information, so I hope all of you were taking notes. I will say we are running behind. So the breakout session, if you want to stay, we're going to go past our 11:15 stop. So, but if all of you are okay to stay, please do. Some of you probably have other meetings. You can go ahead and go, but if you can stay with us, that would be great. So I still want to get to Christen and then have a little Q&A, a very short Q&A, and then we'll do the breakout. So Christen, Frank, she is our last speaker, and Christen is the Vice President of Consumer Experience Program at Bank of the West. In her 15-year career there, she has supported employees in a number of ways, from founding Aspire, an employee resource group for future leaders, serving as president of a Toastmasters Club. She was a national co-chair of the Veterans Resource Group and manager of multiple advocacy and recognition programs. So Christen is a certified customer experience professional and holds a yellow belt in Lean Six Sigma. So Christen, welcome.
Thank you so much for the introduction. Great job, ladies, in all of the topics that you covered. As I looked back at my speech when you guys were talking, I was like, oh my gosh, they covered so much. A lot of my speech is focused on this troubling time and what we've done during this time. So just preface it with that. So if you go ahead and go to the next slide for me, please. Excellent. So in my 14 years with Bank of the West, I've seen and helped develop our diversity, equity, and inclusion program. So a little background about Bank of the West can help you understand our structure here. Bank of the West is all about differentiating itself. Exactly how does it do that from other banks? It's based on their commitment to sustainability, our global reach, and our diversity. While most banks are funding fossil fuels, not us. We're investing in renewable energy. Our global presence reaches 72 countries. And we are the only big bank that is led by a minority woman. Our leaders speak 17 different languages. As a key differentiator from other banks, diversity, equity, and inclusion are extremely important to Bank of the West, as evident by our DE&I and the commitment to our resource groups. While our DE&I team is really small, it is backed by our talent management and our learning and development team. Our head DE&I, our head of DE&I, is also the head of talent management and learning and development. Yes, she is a very, very busy woman. But the upside of that is they've all worked together very closely to help support and drive our values. Now, while our DE&I team is small, you can see that our resource group truly has strength in numbers. With 8 resource groups, we have Abilities in Motion, African American, Aspire, which is the future leaders of the Bank of the West that I helped found. Asian Pacific, Hola is our Hispanic group. Mixed City, which is our women's group. Pride, LGBTQ, and our veterans group. These groups are supported by 16 executive sponsors. Each group gets 2 executive sponsors, 30 national leaders, and that includes co-chairs, secretaries, finance coordinators, and participation coordinators at a national level, and then 45 regional leaders across our footprint, supporting more than 3,500 members. Each resource group is allotted $30,000 annually to spend on sponsorships, events, materials, and branded giveaways. Next slide, please. Excellent. Our culture of support at Bank of the West has only gotten stronger during this unprecedented time. Our resource groups have built strong partnerships across the enterprise and our local communities. With the development of a new 3-part Thrive series, Thrive Individually, Thrive Collectively, and Thrive Sustainably, these courses are designed to help maximize focus, improve collaboration, and increase impact during these challenging times. All 8 resource groups band together to sponsor numerous low-income schools, collecting and sending school supplies to kids that needed them while virtual learning. Our DE&I team hosted a We Stand Together discussion that included a grief counselor and a safe space for resource members to share, grieve, and cope together. The African American Resource Group hosted a homemade podcast they called the Barbershop Talk. This talk discussed racial injustices and personal stories from our very own resource group members. The Women's Resource Group hosted a virtual session on parenting during COVID, sharing stories and tips to support struggling parents. I was definitely one of those. Still am one of those, I'll clarify. The Veterans Resource Group is working on developing a mental fortitude and resilience training to help support mental health throughout our entire company. Da Vinci said, an art consists of two weaknesses, which leaning on each other become a strength. At Bank of the West, we're leaning on each other, becoming stronger so we can overcome the hardships of 2020 together. So now that leads me to lessons learned. As far as lessons learned to maximize your resource group, I will refer to the 3 Ps: passion, partnerships, and perseverance. Passion is truly what drives action in any resource group. If you've been involved in any capacity, you know this firsthand, that you would get burned out if you did not have that passion, first and foremost. Second, you need partnerships. Partnerships are critical to building and expanding impact within your resource groups. And finally, perseverance. Martin Luther King said, if you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, you have to keep moving. This remains true for resource groups as well. There will always be challenges. You will be told no, whether it's lack of budget, lack of commitment from members, from executive sponsors, from anyone, or perhaps it's just lack of time. That's a very common challenge that we have to overcome. Remember, great work is not accomplished through strength, but through perseverance. Employee resource groups are powerful and can drive cultural change. I'll leave it at that.
Great, thank you, Christen. Appreciate your comments as well. So I'm going to pick a couple questions out of the chat box. Both Karis and Joy, I think this one's directed at you. It's really about allowing everybody to join the different ERGs. There's some comments in the chat box about preserving that safe space or and things. So could you guys comment on that for our group here? Yeah, Karis, why don't you go first?
Okay, yeah, I saw that in the chat. So for us, I saw that others have had issues with that and or anticipated issues. We honestly have not. And so I'll just speak from personal experience with African American ERG, and that especially directly following the murder of George Floyd, I was wondering how that conversation was going to go, because we do have quite a few, I won't say quite a few, we have a few members of our ERG that are not Black. And actually my co-chair of the African American ERG is a white woman who is married to a Black man who has biracial children that identify as Black. So even when she joined the ERG and asked me, you know, how I felt about her co-chairing with me, and I said, absolutely, because she said, this is important to me because my kids are not viewed how I'm viewed. They're viewed how you're viewed. And I feel that it's important for me to have a better understanding and sense of that and be able to connect and to be able to, she was like, I'm just gonna be really transparent. I have questions, you know, and I wanna be able to feel like I'm in a safe environment to have those questions answered and not to feel like she's coming, and I don't think any of the non-Black members of our ERG come to the group like, okay, I need to get all the questions answered that I need about Black people. That is not how people come to the group. People listen more. And I think that listening is the most important piece, and not feeling like, oh, I'm here, so I'm the best ally. That's why I'm joined, because I want everyone to know that I'm an ally. And we have not had that with any of our ERGs. And I see that also when I've attended and heard from people from other ERGs that they have not had that either. It's been more of that, I want to listen, I want to learn, but I don't want to make you feel that you have to be the spokesperson for the entire race or the entire whatever that group represents. So we, and that, again, that has been the experience at Moda. It may not be that way at other places, but we've had really good experience with that. And I think it's also in how it's presented during our new employee orientation, that the young lady who presents it, she's a member of the HR team, of course, and she's a member of 3 different ERGs. She identifies as Asian Pacific Islander, but she's another ERG, she's a woman in leadership, she's in Next Gen. So she's able to share that, you know, I'm in multiple ERGs and it's okay, this is welcomed here. And we've never had anyone to, it was good because it was, you know, I said after the George Floyd murder, we had, you know, a lot of employees in our meeting that were very fresh, you know, very, very open with how they were feeling. And we wanted that. And I'm appreciative that people felt that they were in a safe place and being able to do that. And what I was proud of our non-Black members of our ERG is there wasn't a, oh, I understand, you know, it wasn't that I know how you feel, or there wasn't this I understand. It was just a listening. It wasn't an apology, because we didn't need that either. It was just a listening. It was just a listening, and not a what can I do, but just being present and us knowing that you are being an ally because you're being present and you're listening. You're just listening. And I think that makes a huge difference in how that relationship is reciprocated in that environment. Like I said, we've had good experience with it. And I think it's, again, how it's presented, how the ERGs are presented, how they're represented across the company. And that was one of the, I'm sorry, it takes a lot, but that was one of the things that people leadership questioned initially when we had ERGs, is that some of the leadership, I see Joy shaking her head, that some leadership said, I've heard that ERGs can be divisive. And so we really, 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 in how we presented them and all the wording and everything, we really, really strived to make sure that there was nothing that we put out there initially that would make people think that they would be divisive, because that would have been a failure for us.
Thanks, Karis.
If I could add one quick point.
Sure, Christen, go ahead.
Since Bank of the West DE&I team has been established for so long, we too have experienced that struggle throughout the years. And from a logistical perspective, what we found is if a lot of the communications come from our diversity office rather than each of the resource groups, it provides this inclusive environment of them all coming together and coming from a top-down kind of way, a diversity team group, instead of from each resource group. So that's been extremely helpful for us.
Sure. Thanks, Christen. Joy, anything to add?
Just really quickly, I will say I'm going to be very transparent and say that it's a work in progress at the port. I've put it out there when I first got there that, you know, I asked every ERG that I spoke with, what's the diversity makeup of your group? And they were all like, we're all this, we're all this. I think our Black employee group has an ally, one. And I was like, just one? Like, why just one? And it was like, well, it's an office in there, how they made it up. And he's an amazing ally. And I would say that it's a work in progress. Our Black employee network, they really do struggle with having that safe space. But I'm hopeful that as we move through having our port-wide conscious conversations that we have on a weekly basis, that we're building trust, and building of that trust will allow for the resource groups to be more open. They all know, people know that they can all go, but it's not only that the resource groups are hesitant, but it's also our other employees are like, I'm not sure if I should be talking or if I should be saying something or if I should be involved. And so it's really about communicating. And I think once a subset of people actually jump in and participate and see that it's going to be okay, I'm hopeful that we will be just like Moda in that it's not a horrible thing. And if you need, I tell people all the time, if you need to create safe space, create it. Or we're trying to move from safe space to brave space. If you need to create that brave space, create it for yourself. So you want to have someone, when someone wants to come to your meeting, invite them for the first 15 minutes, invite them for the first half hour, and then use your time after they leave the meeting to do your debrief, to have your discussions, to have that connection that you all want to have with one another. Like, learn to be creative and think about how you can do things differently so that you can engage new people to the space, but also feel like you have your own space as a resource group. So there you go.
Good points. Thank you. Thank you, Joy. This next question is for you too. So how did the port decide upon the $500 and $1,000 payment to the employees?
I wish I could say it was like this creative thing. I actually reached out to a counterpart at Nike to see if they paid their resource group leaders. They were doing an amount that was around $1,000 a year per lead and co-lead. And then I'm part of the Diversity Society, and through that organization, I reached out to colleagues there and said, do you all reimburse most people that are part of the Society for Diversity do not compensate their resource group leaders. They may give them a bonus in their pay if it's on their annual performance appraisal. So we just decided that, okay, since Nike's doing $1,000 per person, we're right in the middle of COVID. We typically have a lead and a co-lead or a chair and a co-chair. We would just split and do 500, or if there was just one, they would get the 1,000.
Oh, good. Thank you. Okay, yeah. So are all three of you able to stay for our breakout? I know are you? Oh, awesome. Okay, so Tracy, do you want to go ahead, or Dorothy, put us into breakouts? And for those of you who can stay, thank you. And then we'll come back and do a little sharing. So here are the breakout discussions. So what is one thing you can do to expand the scope of your ERGs to improve workplace culture, and how will you measure success? Second question, what do you need from your organization or executive sponsor in order to support your ERG goals? And what did you learn today that you will try to implement in your workplace? So those are the three questions. I think we'll put them into the chat box so you can jot them down, and then we'll break you out. Welcome back, everybody. I hope you guys all had great conversations. Would love to hear a few things that you would like to share with the bigger group. So I would love volunteer to just unmute themselves and share a couple things that they talked about in their small group. Who's going to be brave and go first?
We had a great discussion, and one of our takeaways was, how do we make sure that our ERG groups that have been formed or are forming are going to be tools for the people in those ERG groups and not tools for the company to put a sticker on their website. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering if anybody has more feedback on that, because that's one thing that we've dealt with at my company a lot, is that the ERG group that we're going to be forming seems to be really based towards white education instead of supporting our BIPOC employees. And we're just wondering how to balance that.
Any comments from anybody? You can also put it into the chat, and we will send the chat out so that all the information that is in there you'll get to see. Nope. Okay.
Is there a way you can do a combination of both, meaning that you build a space for whatever group you're forming, so that they can have their time to come together, talk about the things that are concerning to them on a individual, as a group, as a collective, but then open up the space to allow people to come in. Not necessarily, I think if you listen to what Karis said in the beginning, it's not about asking questions, it's about listening. And then once you develop that relationship, and once you, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Once you develop that relationship, and once you develop, the trust, then people can start asking questions, and then it won't seem like, people that are not part of that demographic are encroaching on the space of the individuals that are part of that demographic. So I don't know if that helps at all.
I'll add something real quick. Also, what we've done when we have been approached, different ERGs have been approached by leadership of, can you do this or can you show up at that? Saying no sometimes, honestly, no, we're not going to be used in that way. And I've said that about different things. Since, helping to lead the African American ERG, I've just been like, well, no, we're not going to attend that one, but thank you, but being honest and saying that that's not really what we want to represent. But this is another event, or this is another program that we're really excited about, but we would love to help Moda promote this.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of works. It's they get it.
Thanks, Karis.
Can I throw something out there?
Yes, please.
So we had that debate about the ERG groups and who's joining them, and how can you control who's joining them, and how do you make sure that the core of the group, the people that identify as whatever, say gay, you don't want it to be where there's 5 gay people that are now educating everyone else that's joining. So we just left it up to the groups to say, hey, you can operate that way, or you can have a LGBT ally sort of segment of the group, and then the core group. So you can talk about your issues, but then still have that larger group to be involved and actively participate. But anyways, that was something we're gonna try.
Thank you, Hunter. Any other comments? We should take just one more. Anybody else like to comment from their group? No. Okay. All right. Well, I want to then take this moment to thank everybody for staying a little longer, and definitely thank our speakers, Karis, Joy, and Christen, for sharing their time and all their valuable knowledge. I thought it was fantastic. Thanks, Kathy, for putting a little reaction in there, a little hand clap. So you can do a hand clap into your video or a little reaction. So I really appreciate it. I think we all learned a lot, and hopefully you can take some of these ideas back into your workspace. I want to ask before you go, or after you log off, there will be a survey to fill out. Again, as Tracy mentioned in the beginning, it's very important to us to hear your comments and also ideas for future programming. I hope a lot of you are signed up for next week, our Putting People First webinar for Breakfast for Champions. We still have space because we are on webinar. We can go up to 1,000 people. So definitely, if there's others in your organization you think would benefit from the webinar, please have them join us. We are, again, recording our webinars and so posting them on our YouTube channel. So that's another option for all of you too. And I've noticed that we're getting a lot of people re-listening to, or maybe for the first time on our YouTube channel from some of our past programs. So please take advantage of that. So, all right. So I think we are, about 10 minutes over. So thank you again for being here. And I look forward to seeing you at our programs later. All right. Bye, everybody. Thank you.